the September 22nd Finance Administration Committee meeting. Cindy Rickards is attending virtually, so I'll be chairing the meeting today. First item on the agenda is the Borough Manager report.
Hey, thank you, Councilman Bush. Get that pulled up here. So, like we told for this meeting, I'll go a little more in detail on the Borough Manager report than we do at the General Council meeting. So first few items are things from previous council meetings that are not on the agenda for tonight's council meeting. One is the Mainline Greenway. I met last week with the folks from Lower Merion Township and the Arbor Cycling Club and other stakeholders on the Mainline Greenway to talk about where that's at. Sounds like Lower Merion Township is still working out some of the planning. One of the items in dispute, it sounds like, or not in dispute, that's too strong of a word. An item that came up for discussion between the Arbor Cycling Club and Lower Merion Township is the size of the markings that will be painted on the road to demarcate the Mainline Greenway. And so that's some of the stuff they're working through. There was a bike ride on the 18th to kind of like show people where the route would be and all that. And there's going to be another bike ride on October 24th. I was unable to attend one on the 18th, but I have blocked my schedule out to attend one on the 24th. And then the next meeting of the Mainline Greenway kind of stakeholder group is going to be on October 22nd. And so I hope sooner than later. My kind of thought is, you know, as soon as Lower Merion is ready to go, that we're ready to go. And I think Haverford Borough has done, you know, I mean, honestly, there's not much for us to do. We're kind of following Lower Merion's lead on this. But I think we're in a position that as soon as Lower Merion says go, we're, you know, our public works and the Arbor Cycling Club and Borough resources are pretty much ready to go.
Great.
The Borough did submit the county transportation grant, again, by thanks to Councilman Bush as well as the Borough engineer, Eric Johnson, for their work on that. We got some good news earlier today. We got a follow-up question from the county about the grant. And in my opinion, when the granting agency bothers to ask you follow-up questions, it means they're very seriously considering your grant award. So maybe we'll have good news on that in the near future. The Haverford App Project. So the bid documents and all that are pretty much taken care of. The contractor did request a 6-month extension due to inability to secure materials. Before agreeing to that, I did ask the borough engineer, is that an everyone problem? Like, can we just go to the next bidder and go ahead and get the project done? And the borough engineer, his advice was that anyone and everyone's gonna have a problem getting materials for the project. So we did stick with the low bidder and did agree to grant a 6-month delay to start the project. And then another piece of good news, I'm kind of glad, I feel like I have mostly good news here to share tonight. The state of Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission did approve the historic district ordinance. So we are, you know, that's officially in effect now in Borough. Now, yeah, now of course the main follow-up thing for Borough Council and Borough staff are trying to advertise for this is actually getting numbers on our part to actually, you know, review any certificates of appropriateness and all that. But we'll get there. The hard part is done.
So if somebody has a project now that would fall under the ordinance, what would happen?
Yeah, so if any project applied for at this point, anything that was applied for prior to the approval wouldn't be affected by it. Would have to get a certificate of appropriateness. Given that the borough does not have a HARB at the moment, it would have to just go straight to Borough Council for, you know, for approval or denial. Sorry, we have the windows open in here for anyone who watches this later. Anyway, If it's administrative, there is language in there allowing the borough staff to administratively handle a lot of things. But anything beyond that level, until we have a hard setup, we have to go straight to borough council.
Okay.
And then the last item of note I have on the manager's report is, as of September 7th, the offices are open 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. again. Masks are required for anyone coming into the office. If you do not have masks, one will be provided for you. Also, we have started allowing people to rent the multi-purpose room and the council chambers again, with the caveat that they have to comply with COVID regulations, including that no events involving food or drink are allowed, because there's no way you can wear a mask indoors while doing a food or drink related event. And that is the manager's report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think the next item is the treasurer report. You put on your
Oh,
big
there's
hat.
the treasurer hat, yeah. Sure, my apologies to the members about the little mishap we had in sending out the treasurer's report. I hope you all were able to at least take a brief look at the actual full version of the report that went out. So I guess the main thing is I'll note, we're still in the time of year when the borough has the bulk of its money because we got all our property taxes back in May and June. Looking in particular at the solid waste fund, I did want to note that there's a lot more expenses in that fund this year because Lower Merion Township sent us billings for disposal that are actually from 2020. So what should be happening, and we're working with the Republic to make sure it does, the way our contract with Republic is set up is that they're supposed to be crediting our bills to them based on any bills we get from Lower Merion Township for disposal fees. So those bills have all been passed on to Republic. I'm expecting to see credits on our disposal fees for the rest of the year in regards to those bills that we paid to Lower Merion Township, and I'll definitely keep a close eye on that one.
So it should balance.
It should, yeah.
I have a question, maybe it's for after the treasurer's report, but it's just, do you want to take it now? It's just related to
Yeah, sure.
disposal fees. I've discovered recently that residents are not able to use the Lower Merion transfer station. It used to be the county transfer station on Woodbine Avenue, and now it's the Lower Merion manages it. And I guess I made the assumption that Narberth residents would still be able to use it for a fee, for a dumping fee, but they're saying no, that Narberth residents are not able to use it at all. So I'm wondering, and I think it may be because we now have this contract where Narberth residents can put large items out once a week. But I'm wondering if you could find out what the story is with the transfer station, because it's something that's been a habit of residents of Narberth for pretty much forever, or anybody's memory, to be able to go to the transfer station.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll look into that, Bob. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll definitely let you know. The other thing that I wanted to point out briefly is in the Highway Aid Fund, the borough was delayed in receiving its liquid fuels allocation for this year. There was there's 3 reports we're required to provide to the state every year, and they use withholding your liquid fuels money or highway aid money as the stick to make you submit them. And it's just something that fell through the cracks. Michelle Carroll wasn't told that she needed to do this report, and just the manager change, it didn't happen. So we got that taken care of, and this month we did receive our liquid fuels. Sorry, I'm used to calling it liquid fuels from previous employment, our highway aid funding. So that'll show up in next month's
We
treasurer's
always
report.
called it liquid fuels. Did the name change?
It's a highway aid fund that's going into for us, but it is still liquid fuels.
Yeah,
for the state,
especially
so-
the liquid
I don't know, we
fuels.
always use liquid fuels.
Okay,
I know what
gotcha,
you're
yeah.
talking, we know what you're talking about,
Yeah, in my last job, I also called it the liquid fuels fund, so.
Yeah, the same thing, same difference.
Otherwise, that's kind of the, we'll talk more about the budget in a few minutes, but otherwise, I mean, the borough for this year, again, we talked about it a couple times before, due to one-time situations with staffing, with some one-time revenue influxes, the borough is in a good financial position for this year, and, we'll be talking about next year in a few minutes here. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, that's how that's done. I should have waited. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking on that, though. That's good.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Does anyone have comments about the minutes?
Folks, you should have had this sent out. I think both of you actually replied and said looks good.
I move that we approve the minutes from August 8th. Is it August 18th? No. Yeah, it was August 18th.
August minutes, yeah.
Yeah, August 18th.
I'll second that.
Great,
Anyone
thank you.
opposed to approving the minutes? Okay. All right.
It's unanimous.
It's unanimous. Okay, and information items for discussion. Comprehensive Plan Implementation Review.
Yeah, so.
I have-
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Norm. This is the awkwardness of Zoom. I could have read your body language better if I was sitting there. I just want to say, going through the review, that's really helpful. And Fred, it was you who said, hey, we ought to be doing this review. Because it really just reminded me areas that we really need to focus, some things that I think at least fell off of my radar, others that I felt really accomplished. So the review process personally was incredibly helpful. I hope that other folks have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I went through it and I found a lot that we haven't really touched, and then a few that we, yep, definitely did that. Check off. Very satisfying to find some that, yeah, we've definitely accomplished that.
I found it a little confounding and frustrating actually, because I thought that, like, and I guess, to my own embarrassment, I guess I hadn't previewed the entire document as a member of this committee prior to, us publishing that for council. But I guess there's the questions imply that council intends to take action on all of those items. And I guess I question the wisdom of taking action on some of those items. And I found those particular questions a little confounding. For example, I know that it would be of service to this community if residents had the resources available to them to, say, have assistance in fixing up old houses, right? But, as somebody who has spent a lot of my lifetime fixing up old houses, I don't know what we mean by that. YouTube's a really great resource for people fixing up old houses. And, so are my neighbors who are architects. They're great resources. So I'm not sure, is this a service that the municipality wants to provide to the residents, or do we just want to encourage some kind of informal network, or what was the intention of the comp plan committee in creating that goal?
So I read that as something that the HARB would be, part of the HARB bill is that they're going to give you advice on finding suitable materials for renovating your old house, and so I think that's something that's already partly covered in the.
So that's in a sense that was in progress.
Yeah, or
how would you have created that one?
Probably in progress, and we don't have the infrastructure in place yet. But
okay,
I mean that's how I read that.
Okay, so I just wasn't.
And Bob,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Along your thinking, I commented on areas specifically about the bike lane and the fix-it station and the infrastructure. Part of my comments were, this was the work. This is either in progress or complete. And really the result, not of council, although we supported it, but of citizen advocacy.
Okay, great.
And
great.
Council supported. So for your example, with the support with fixing up older homes, I really felt I read the comprehensive plan because it was so community driven as kind of the community has identified that this is an interest of ours, and how can council support that? Maybe we're not driving all of it. I interpreted it as how can we support it? and actually cited some of the bike infrastructure work really from the Narber Cycling Club that, again, Fred, you went on to support, but I mean, if we're all being really honest, it was the work of the NCC that drove a lot of the biking culture that we have now. And thinking about ways that we can encourage folks and support folks to do this, I thought was embedded throughout that comprehensive plan.
Okay, well that puts me at ease about, because that's more congruent with my reading of the comprehensive plan than the way in which the evaluation of the comprehensive plan came across. Is like, I guess I kept imagining like, oh, we're putting a lot of pressure on our staff now to do all these things that like really are really not in my view, something we expect our staff to do, or expect the borough government to do. But I like the way you just framed it, Cindy. I totally agree with you. And we're on the move with so much, yeah.
Agreed, and I hope that when we have this kind of review in a town hall, that there are groups that step up and say, we'd like to take this on, and maybe the office staff and council support is a presence on our webpage, for example, or steering community members to a certain resource. But I really hope that our town hall on our public review of this inspires folks to again move into that citizen advocacy and volunteer role.
Yeah, because it's really just to sort of agree with you. I want to say, like, I really agree that when the council can enable the residents and the groups of residents who are sort of ready, willing, and able to do things that are for the community, we should empower them to do that as much as possible. And I think the comp plan does create that that context for action. I guess, yeah. Well, I told you my concern. So yeah, I almost felt like there should be like sort of another box to check that maybe sort of flavors it like as more sort of community versus like expectation of staff or something. So but I think the conversation's enough. Yeah, thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, I think a lot of the value is going to be looking at the really high priority items that we haven't really addressed. I think that we're going to find, that they're set on different, there are different priority levels for all of the items in the comp plan, and some of them we've got a great start on, and some of them we don't. So I think. That reminds me of let's talk about specifically like sort of sidewalks and curbs. I read that and I was like, well, we have a really great program for how sidewalks and curbs are renewed in the borough. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about borough sidewalks and curbs? Are we talking about, which sidewalks and curbs are we talking about? I sort of was like, well, what's the problem? Our sidewalks and curbs are continually being renewed, and we have a procedure for that. And if people are concerned about, say, sidewalks and curbs within borough properties, well, I'm assuming there is a public works, that's on somebody's checklist and it's happening. So who am I as a member of this community to be evaluating whether that's being done or not? I assume that's being done. So let's talk about that one. How did you answer that?
I think, if I may, I think this is another good opportunity that will come from this exercise, is giving council an opportunity to better understand the workings of the borough and where we have strengths and where we have weaknesses.
Yeah.
So to just take the sidewalk example that you raised.
Yeah.
So the only program, well, I don't mean to dismiss it, but the program the borough currently has is when someone sells their property, the sidewalk gets inspected and they have to correct it at that point.
Yeah.
However, beyond that, the borough doesn't have any program for it. And in addition, we found, myself and Kevin really looked into this, we found the borough's sidewalk ordinance is a little lacking compared to other places. Like, it doesn't specifically call out keeping vegetation trimmed back from the sidewalk. It doesn't give any specific guidance as to how much unevenness you're allowed to have, those sort of things. Mm-hmm. So actually, one of the, at the next PHS meeting, I have a proposal that me and Kevin are working on, Kevin being the borough's, for everyone watching this recording later, the borough's code enforcement officer, to do a borough-wide sidewalk inspection, because it's never been done before.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and that's why I think the comp plan, this discussion as well will be really great for everyone. So everyone really knows like what is the borough doing or not doing, and we can all be on the same page about it.
And Bob, to your point, because this is actually helpful talking through some of the examples. I made a comment with, there was one of the goals about Station Circle, for example. And we had all these great proposals from the Penn students for Station Circle. We really haven't done anything with that space. And now, pandemic and post-pandemic, that becomes a high priority to me personally as we rethink, the social infrastructure or public space of our community. And I made the notes, I hope that this is something where we can, as council, support the staff and specifically the Director of Public Works position to perhaps feel supported or empowered to really take the lead on some of that.
Yeah, I guess when I got to that question, again, I was like a little confounded because absolutely we wanted to redo Station Circle from the day it was redone, right? Because for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, a lot of residents wanted to redo it from the day it was redone. Yes, it was nice. It was a big improvement. We're grateful to have the grant and the renovation in 2001. And there's there's the problems that redesign proposed didn't go away and maybe got worse. Like, in fact, we dumped the $10,000 and more into protecting lights that were getting run over by cars backing up, for example, and we do know that that we're going to have opportunities. There was no way to really address that in any kind of nuanced way. There will be opportunities in the future for the redesign of Station Circle, that are going to come with the SEPTA station, that are going to come with other downtown development, and we should be prepared to join those initiatives. But at this moment, is it when we're going to discuss how that fits into the priorities of all the things that need to be done within the borough, right? And I guess I just didn't see how to say, well, no progress has been made. I think a lot of progress has been made because I think there's a much better consciousness community-wide about the necessity for sort of better public space, right? So to me, it's we've gone a long way towards getting there, and it's yeah, it will come. It's going to come. But there was no way to answer it that way.
Well, hopefully, if we have a further discussion of this, we can,
I guess it's a great starting point for a lot of dialogue. And I guess that's what you're saying, Samantha, aren't you?
Yeah, I bet there'll be things too that are the opposite, where maybe council thinks we haven't made any progress on something, and it turns out the borough staff have been trying to do lots of things to deal with it. Right. And then maybe that council says, okay, well, whatever you've been doing hasn't been working, or we're not aware of it, or whatever, and we figure out different ways to do things. Or I just think it's going to be a really valuable exercise, and I'm really glad we're doing it. And I'm glad that people are filling it out now.
Okay. Good. That helps me, and I, as a council person, be a better participant too.
And I feel like it's the perfect segue to our next point, actually, because Samantha, it helps you in the office really identify them. What are the priorities from that comprehensive plan to that grant strategy?
Yeah, if I can speak to that. Yeah, I agree. I think last month we had a really great discussion with that memo I sent around about tying any grant application to something in the borough comprehensive plan. And plus, we're going to be a lot more competitive for our grant applications by tying things back to the comp plan. What I started working on, and I didn't want to go full bore on this without before you all saw it and had comments. So I started putting together a grant calendar, which was distributed to everyone. And the first worksheet on this Excel sheet is a summary, or will be, there's only 2 examples on it right now, will be a list of grants that I think are most relevant that we're going to be looking at doing. And it has just a really basic overview of the purpose of the grant, the amount of money we could apply for, and any matching requirements. But most importantly, it has what month the grant is due on. So we'd be able to, sort these grants by when in the year they're due. It's like the first example that I have is the Montgomery County 2040 Implementation Grant, which applications appear to be due in March of each year. So that way we know, even if the grant hasn't been officially announced yet, we know in like December or January to really start thinking about that. Or the other one I have is the transportation grant that we just applied for. We know now that's due around July of every year. So again, around March or April, we can start thinking about that. I'm really grateful to, I said the folks who are involved in applying for that county transportation grant, because we got that together in the span of like 5 weeks. And that's not necessarily how you want to do grants on a regular basis. So I think that in the calendar we can be a little bit more proactive as opposed to reactive to our grant applications. I think by having the purpose of grants summarized on this sheet, it'll be easy for us to cross-reference with the comprehensive plan. And I basically, for purpose, I just listed keywords for each grant. So if we needed a grant for something related to stormwater, we just hit, Control F to find on this sheet, type in the word stormwater, and you'd see all the grants related to it. The second page of the worksheet are grants that we've applied for and their current status since 2019. If I'm missing anything, let me know. I have 4 on there right now. I might be missing 1 or 2 since I'm new here. And that'll kind of let us keep track of, how many grants we have out right now, what are we doing, and I think it'll just give us a really easy way to report to the public, and for me to report to council what's going on with our grants. And almost we could pretty much, if we wanted to, make it part of the treasurer's report or part of the manager's report.
Yeah, I don't know if the NIDA's assistance counts should be put on this page or should be kept separately. It's not exactly a competitive grant, but it's similar.
It's an external funding source.
Yeah, I think it belongs there. I don't know, you couldn't tell that Fred and I were probably both smiling. So I don't know, Cindy was smiling. So thank you.
Yeah, this is really great.
Thank you.
We're very busy. I wonder how many times we can actually go to the well with some of these grants. Is the one question I'm seeing. We've already, but yeah, it's gonna be great to have this in a visible form so we can all look at it and think about it.
Yeah, you might
be on the same page, literally.
You might be surprised.
Really?
In my last job with the Pico Green Region Grant, you're allowed to apply for that every 2 years. And pretty much, let's see, I was in New Britain 5.5 years, and New Britain got 3 of those. And then with the state multimodal grant, again, New Britain got $600,000 from that, and then 2 years later got another $400,000 from that. So yeah, it's tougher to get money from the same grant over and over, but it's not impossible either. And this list is it's gonna turn into like a, 40, 50 item list as we go. So.
Just a question, was New Britain on a state highway?
Yeah, actually.
It was? Yeah. Which one?
Route 202.
Oh, okay.
Avenue.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Any comments about the grant strategy? All right, we have a budget update. 2022 budget update is the next item on the agenda.
Sure. So with the 2022 budget, what's been going on with that is I've been collecting budget requests from various borough committees as well as external parties that the borough's involved with, like the Narberth Ambulance Company, the Narberth Library, groups like that. And the way I'm planning to present the budget to council, and I'm planning to, and I hope to have a draft for you all tonight, but I am planning for the October 6th work session to have the first draft of the budget available for discussion. If you want, I can email it to this committee so you all, at least as finance, have chance to do a look at it before it goes to full council. But the way I like to do the budget is the first draft is what I call the vanilla budget. And that budget is basically if all of council was in a coma all of next year, what would happen with borough finances if we made literally no changes, no decisions, anything like that. And then what I like to do on top of that is add almost like a, I guess I'll call it a la carte list of budget decisions. So it would be things like, if you change the fee schedule to this is what the impact on revenue would be. Or if you change, reduced or raised this tax rate, this would be the impact of revenue. As well as a summary of the budget requests received. For example, the Narber Civic Association, Jim's in the room, so there's on my mind here. Had suggested the borough spend, what was it, $1,500, I believe.
We need to talk about that, but yes.
Okay. I
That's
talked about spending $1,500 to upgrade the audio recording equipment, get some microphones and such for the room here. So for example, that would be like an item council could say, yes or no to. And as well as an opportunity for me to talk. So that's how I like to present it. I like to talk big picture themes. I like to present the vanilla budget. And then I like to present these a la carte options, which will also include my, thoughts and requests for the budget as well. And, kind of see what council thinks, see if there's any requests from council members or any ideas for the budget that maybe, staff or other organizations didn't think of. I then like to take the next month to actually work that into a final draft budget for the November work session, getting final comments on it, make any final changes, and then present that at the November business meeting for council to approve for advertisement, and then for council to actually approve it at your December business meeting once it's been properly advertised. So right now, I'm pretty far along, but not done with the vanilla budget. And I've started working a bit on the a la carte list. Probably by the end of next week, I would have the vanilla budget and the a la carte list done, and I could send that around to finance and administration. And then I'm probably going to need all of the next week before the budget work session, or before the council work session, sorry, to do like the PowerPoint presentation that will go along with it. And all this does include the capital plan as well. I understand why in the past that was maybe treated as a separate presentation. Just for me and my work style, I find it much easier to wrap my head around the capital plan by incorporating it into the budget. As well as I noticed in the past, the borough did not have the highway aid fund in the budget, so that's going to be added to the budget as well.
I have a couple of questions because I want to make sure, even though I've been on council a while, I'm kind of a novice at, first time ever being on finance administration, and it's never been an area that I've spent a lot of time focused on. But as you talk about the vanilla budget and then kind of the a la carte, so I guess your toppings.
Yeah, I like that. That's a better metaphor.
You have vanilla and then you have toppings. I'm wondering, you said something about the vanilla budget being based on the previous year, no changes, no decisions. So I'm wondering if there's like items from the previous year that you have to strip away, because those were the toppings from the previous year, or maybe even items that fall. I'm wondering if you're including in your vanilla item budget things that are sort of like assumptions of prior council, or do you strip those out and put those in sort of a
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for that clarification, Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like, it strips away the decisions that council made unless they have a continued impact into 2022.
Got it. Like it might have been a multi-year decision, in which case obviously it has to carry through. But Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So I did I've looked at, our accounting software goes back to 2018. So even though I'm new here, I have been able to in the accounting, look at each budget line item and see what it was spent on to kind of get a sense of what was a one-time purchase and what's something that I would expect to continue into the future.
okay. Great. There were items, for example, as a member of public health and safety, there were items that we were looking at, say a very, very limited number of items that are council-driven decisions around expenditures, say for training, like police trainings, those kinds of things that council was not necessarily consciously directing, but seemed to just kind of make it into the budget year over year. And so, yeah, would those come as would you present those to us as vanilla or a la
No,
carte?
that would be a la carte. The way I view stuff like that is, I think one of the worst cliches in governmental budgeting, and maybe in other organizations as well, but I know government the best, is, if groups are encouraged to spend the money they're budgeted because they're afraid if they don't, someone will look at the last year and be like, oh, you only spent $4,000 of your $6,000 training budget, so you get $4,000. I kind of view each year as its own thing. So what I would do and what I'm going to do is, I would ask Chief Gallagher, if we're talking about the police, I would ask Chief Gallagher, what trainings do you think, you're going to have people go to next year, and what's how much money do you think you're going to need for that?
Mm-hmm.
Or ditto for the administrative staff as well. I would tell council, me, Michelle, and Missy are going to go to these, or want to go to these trainings. This is historically how much those trainings have cost us. We need this much money.
Yeah.
And those would be a la carte.
Interesting.
Those would be toppings.
I'm kind of having this remembrance of going to 16 Candles, where you get you can put your yogurt under the thing.
Yeah.
And you get, and in some ways
I need to pick a different metaphor.
But in some ways it's like you've got, liquid fuels,
Yeah.
right? You've got tax money, you've got fees, you've got sort of different flavors of ice cream kind of coming in, right? That come in to make this, right? And then actually the budget's kind of like the person we're eating it. I'm sorry. And the toppings bar is kind of like the things council gets to put in. Anyway.
I like how you think of it.
I like your metaphor.
Yes.
It's very good.
Samantha, can I ask a question with trainings, for example, just getting back to the police training? It would be really helpful to identify, because police uniquely, and maybe public works with some of the vehicles they drive or equipment they use, there are some trainings that are required.
Right.
Like a taser training, we want to fund that, for sure. Firearm training.
Yeah.
It would be helpful to have here are the necessary trainings, here are the want trainings, professional development trainings, to really understand that, because that's where council may come in and say, okay, we absolutely agree, these are the must-have trainings. However, we would like to allocate some funds and stipulations on some want trainings, perhaps, that we feel that we would fund trainings in certain categories. If that makes sense, to perhaps maybe break that down a little clearer, so we all understand what's kind of mandated versus what's desired.
Yeah, that's a good point. Probably what I would do is just the mandated stuff would be in, to your point, would be in the vanilla budget, and then only the, I don't know, you used a good word earlier that I think was good for it, not discretionary, but, sorry, what word did you use, Cindy? Professional development, that was it.
Well,
Versus
you said mandatory. There are mandatory trainings, and then there's the optional trainings.
Like aspirational,
Yeah,
professional development trainings.
Yeah, only that.
And I say that because as a council, we may say, let's use public works and not police. Let's say public work employees have to get a training on, driving certain equipment. And then as a council, we may say, we'd really like you to attend professional development on environmental stewardship or stormwater gardening. And we are earmarking an additional training column for trainings that will add to a skill set which meets the identified goals of the community. So whether that's public works or policing or even office staff, you know, Samantha, maybe you say these are the kind of standard operating procedure trainings that municipal management leaders go to. As a council, we can say this is an area that we really want to support you in developing, and therefore we'll earmark those funds as well.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, to give an office example, when Michelle was promoted to assistant to the manager, part of her offer letter that council approved was requiring her to get the municipal management certificate from Penn State. And I would want the whoever we end up hiring as director of public works, if that person doesn't already have PennDOT's, forgive the pun, Rhodes Scholar designation to attend those trainings and get that certification, for example.
I like that because, again, I really do think that a budget is a value statement. And I talk about this when I teach too. You know, like it's wonderful for us to say and communities to say we're, you know, environmentally sound or we're whatever, fill in the blank. But until it's in your budget and identified, it feels performative. So I think it's important for us to say these are our values and this is how we're going to invest in them. And this is how someone can look at our budget and see that we are in fact doing that.
Yeah, I'll admit that's actually the reason that I got my degree in public finance and why I ended up kind of starting in the finance department before working over to management. Is exactly, you can have all the dreams in the world, but until there's money in the budget for it, it's not going to happen. And I give this for a lot of credit for not just talking the talk, but things like the climate action plan, like actually putting money in the budget to make sure these things happen.
Yeah, there was a lot of debate about that particular one. Okay, so just in terms of time management, I think we're all on board with your plan for how to do the budget, or how to lay out the budget for everybody to see. I think if we're not going to, you know, you're talking about sending it just to us. I think it probably should go to all of council, just unless, you know, it would go to us if we're going to discuss it like in advance of the rest of council. But if all of council is going to be discussing it at the same time, we probably should all be getting it, you know, when it's
Yeah, I'm not
close enough to finish
yeah. Whatever, I was fun to give you all as the finance committee. I'm comfortable with your preference.
Probably should just go to, I don't know, Cindy, do you have a strong opinion about that?
Yeah, I think this council works so well together. And Samantha, I appreciate your kind of acquiescing and giving us a first look. But I think, Fred, to your point, everyone's going to be eager to see it, and I don't feel like there's any need for us to review it prior.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would make sense if we were having a meeting before the discussion of it in council, but we won't be. This is going to be at the workshop, right? So, yeah.
Agreed. I thought when Samantha suggested that we were going to be meeting to discuss it. So I thought, oh, of course.
Yeah. All right. Next item is the proposal to refinance the debt.
All right. So my things, there were, in advance of this meeting, there were some comments pointed out to me about the document we're going to review, and I will be sure to try to point those out while we're going through it. So the borough has some debt currently. When I first started working here and saw the interest rates on that debt, it was higher interest rates than what I've seen in other municipalities. In addition, when working on the 2022 budget, I realized that the borough was likely going to need, if council agrees with me in a couple weeks, some additional funding for capital projects that will require us to take on debt. So I reached out to a company called Public Financial Management. I've worked with them in my past few municipalities for handling debt, and we've had a very successful partnership in both refinancing debt and taking on new debt. So I had them take a look at the existing debt that Haverford Borough has to decide if it's something that's viable to refinance or not, as well as let us know what sort of interest rates we might be looking at if we took out any new debt. So the first well, the first page is their names. And the second page is the historical yields and interest rates on municipal debt. If you look in particular at the spot analysis they have, there was a sharp rise in rates right near the beginning of 2020, as you all may remember when COVID and all that first happened. But since then rates have been very low, and so it seems like a good opportunity, a good market right now to potentially reduce our interest payments on our debt. So the next page, page 2 of their presentation, page 3 of the PDF, goes through our existing debt. There are 3 loans they looked at. The borough actually has 4. The loan that we took out for the street lights was not considered because its interest rate is only like barely above 1%, and that we would not be able to. And also, we're going to pay it off next year, so refinancing that wouldn't make any sense. We do have loans from 2014 and a loan from 2014 and 2 loans from 2019 that the outstanding balance totals a little over $1 million. I also asked them, I'm not saying we would necessarily take out this much money, but just to cover all our possible bases, I asked them to look at what it might cost for us to borrow $3 million in new debt. And one of the main issues with the presentation is on page 3, and my thanks to Councilmember Bush for pointing this out, is when they did the analysis of our existing debt, the loan we have from 2014, they didn't calculate that one correctly. They still had it listed as us owing over $71,000 this year in debt service on that one. When that was the debt service for the entire year, and we're in September now, so that number is considerably lower at this point in the year. And that was one of our higher interest loans. So that did kind of pad the case a little bit for doing a refi. And then in addition on page, let's see here. Well, the other thing that happened is when looking at our debt that's a variable rate, the 2019 loans, the maximum interest rate was assumed on those loans, whereas again, historically rates are low, and one of those loans from 2019, we're actually paying, the max rate is 5.5%, and we're only paying 2.2% on it right now. So one of the suggestions that I think was a great one is A, to correct the obvious error, and number 2, while I understand why they went with the maximum rate, because it's a number that you can definitely define, going with a more historical average of interest rates might be a better way to examine the future debt service we have in terms of deciding on a refinancing. Now, that being said, when they, even with the caveat that this was like worst case scenario sort of thing, it did appear that there would be significant savings from refinancing. And even if you look at, historically what interest rates we've been paying and historically what they've been, there's a pretty wide spread on that. Like I said, the Del Valle loan is like a little over 1%. The one loan is a little over 2%. The one loan from 2019 right now is at 5.25%. And now to be fair to that one, that is a what's called a taxable loan. There's a provision in federal tax law to where municipal debt isn't taxable. So, or isn't, for someone who buys municipal debt, their returns on that debt are not taxable. So, so we're able to get lower interest rates because of that. So, so that will still be, it'll still be a taxable amount no matter what.
It's taxable because we took it out to do repairs at 201 Sabine, which is an income generating property for the borough. So because we're making money off the property, it's not tax deductible for us, or for the borough.
So we have, debt right now that, throwing the Del Valle one out, which isn't being considered for refi, we have debt right now between 2 and 5.25%. And again, I did some refinancing last year of a similar amount and got a rate of 1.2%. Not only that, it was a fixed rate over the life of the loan, whereas we have variable rates on our existing loans. So I do think there's value just for budget certainty. I do think we would save some money on the refi, even when you factor in the, there are fees associated with doing new debt. Obviously there's PFM's fees. I do want to be clear about that. There are attorney fees, there are bank fees. But I think that even if we get a revised proposal done that, it's a little bit more realistic about the benefit of refi, I am confident there would still be some kind of financial benefit to the borough. And I think just for budget certainty, it might not be bad to know that this is what our debt service is going to be and not have to worry about what's going to happen with interest rates.
That makes good sense.
Yeah, so I mean, based on, so I crunched the numbers when I was looking at this, and I don't think that the 2014 loan, and we'll see what they tell us once they correct the numbers. I don't think the 2014 loan is going to be, there's going to be any savings from refinancing, just because we're so far into paying it off that there's not a lot of interest remaining on it to save. So it would surprise me if there was a significant savings there, but I think you're right with the 2019 loans that there's plenty of room for savings, even with a change of assumptions. So yeah, it looks to me like that's very likely, but I would like to see a revised estimate on those for being confident there's a savings. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, if everyone else agrees, I would agree with that, and I'd certainly be willing to go back to PFL and get a revised proposal for next month's meeting.
Yeah, because there's no, what's the, I mean, you'd set out a potential timeline, but there's no real urgency in this, right? It's just, it's going to take advantage of the rates while we can.
Yeah, that'd be taking advantage of the rates while we can, and then number two would be, if the borough does have capital projects in 2022 that we need to have debt funded, in particular, I'm thinking about the air conditioner. I would want to have.
We're all thinking about the air conditioner. Right?
Yeah, it's 80 something degrees right now.
Cindy's sitting pretty over there. Yeah.
Yeah, Cindy, you made the right call.
Sorry, but I support you all with the air conditioning for sure. But much like our homes, then. It does open a can of worms with saying, you're putting in an air conditioner with windows that are, losing air and heat as fast as we're pumping it out. So with the rates so low, with the ability to have a fixed loan rate, I would be interested in seeing different iterations or plans, loan rates, and what that would look like. So, air conditioning, and windows. To some of your point about other capital plans or projects that emerge as a now priority from both a comprehensive plan and a perspective on what our town looks like post-pandemic. So to see, different levels of debt and what that would look like would be interesting.
Yeah, I think that maybe the timeline I'm envisioning is, we get a revised presentation for the refi with the understanding that we are not settled on what any new debt might be at. By November, we'll be pretty close to being done with the 2012. By November, we'll be pretty close to being done with the 2022 budget. We'll have a sense of what, if any, debt we're going to be taking on for next year, and then we can get an accurate number, from PFL to do that. I don't think the interest rate is going to change that much. The biggest thing that would change is the more debt depending on the amount of debt you take on, it changes the time window you have to repay it. Obviously, banks want you to go as short as possible. Doing anything longer than 20 years isn't going to be feasible. But also, if we, let's say, only took out $500,000 in debt, then we wouldn't need 20 years to pay that off. We'd pay that off in 5 or 10 years kind of thing. So I'm thinking as we work through the 2022 budget, we can really narrow down the target for what the new debt might be, if any. And before we pull the trigger on everything, we'll have an updated refi number. and we'll have an accurate number for new debt with the things you're talking about, council member records.
All right, that sounds good to me. So we'll be back next month with the new numbers on this. All right. Okay. Cindy, is that anything else to add? Okay, great. So that's it for information items. Then we have action items for Borough Council at the next business meeting. First is the minutes and the scheduled bills. There was one minor error in the minute. Has that been cleaned up?
That is fixed to the council packet.
Okay, great. Anybody have any comments about the minutes of the scheduled bills? No? All right. The 2022 police pension MMO and 2021 police pension valuation.
Sure. So the quick version on this is every 2 years the borough is required to update its actuarial assumptions for its police pension, and well, actually for both the non-uniform and the police pension. The borough uses CBIZ as its actuary for the police pension. We have their latest actuarial report. Some of the main changes that they made were updating our assumptions about interest rates and what sort of interest investment income we're going to make from the plan, which is largely driven by council's decision to hire an investment manager. And that investment manager is from CBIZ, and working with the actuary, they think they can confidently get at least a 6% a year return on it. Also, as I think I may have noted before, the new labor contract with the police department made some tweaks in terms of who would be eligible for disability pension, which is a much higher payout than a normal retirement pension. And by making that more restrictive, that obviously saves us money in the future on pension payments. Finally, I did provide the actuary with the future, with the labor rates and everything like that were agreed to in the labor contract, and they updated their assumptions accordingly. So the good news is that the end result of it all is the borough's contribution towards the police pension is going to go down quite a bit from last year. I think it's in the neighborhood of $70,000 or so. So I certainly recommend approval of it, but I certainly am happy to discuss any questions or comments anyone has.
Any questions or comments? All right. Great. And looks like we're continuing to, the amount in the pension fund seems to be increasing. The percent funded is going up as well. So the fund is in better shape than it has been in the last few years.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The only thing I'll note, put a little bit of damper on the general good news with it, is we are still just below 70% funded, which according to the state does make the plan distressed. The good news though, as Councilor Bush said, is it is moving in the right direction, and I'm very hopeful that for our next valuation in 2 years, it will be above that threshold.
Yeah, this MMO is calculated by the actuary to get us to 100% funded. So
exactly.
That's what should happen over the next, over the life of the plan.
True, if that doesn't happen, we need to rethink our actuary.
Okay, next item is the non-uniformed MMO.
So same sort of situation as the police pension. Every 2 years, we have to do an actuarial report. In the case of the non-uniform employees, that's run by PMRS, the Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement Service, and they handle all the investment and actuarial calculations and everything like that for the plan. Because of some of our changes in staffing, I think that number went down a little bit on our MMO. Actually, let's see here. Yeah, I think we're going to save, compared to this year, $10,000 or $15,000, $10,000. So it went down a little bit. I will note that on the page listing our current employees, so that report is as of August 10th. you submit updates to PMRS quarterly, and I did not submit, being a new person here will not happen in the future. I submitted our update to PMRS on like August 12th, so that's why certain employees are still listed as active, and that's why, for example, my name is not on the pension plan. However, in our next year's MMO, it'll be updated, and it will have a very minor impact on our contribution level.
Does that mean that you're not getting?
No, I'm on the
Okay.
plan, yeah.
All right.
I'm on the plan, and it's funny the way it works, like, I mean, I was added to the plan when I started working here, but they have a separate thing, and I've been making contributions and all that. It's just that there's a separate sheet that PMRS has you fill out to update this list for the MMM.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments about that? That is almost entirely funded, and we don't have, borough contribution to that is fairly low compared to the uniform MMO. Next item is storage of weapons on borough property. This is I don't remember discussing this, so definitely need
This was something I suggested that FNA consider, and I can give a little context. While we can't regulate carrying a legal weapon in any borough-owned property, we can, however, regulate the storage of guns and ammunition on any borough property. Given the nature of the community use of our buildings, I just really feel that it behooves us to solidify the fact that outside of our police station, there is not a public area, place, or space that should have ammunition or weapons stored. And per John Walker, that is something that we would have to, Samantha, we'd have to move beyond resolving to do that, but putting it into user agreements, correct?
Well, actually, John Walker just
John just
actually
walked
walked
in.
in, so,
Oh, perfect. Hi, John.
Hi. I don't take my seat.
you come join us here, thanks.
And just to give you a little bit of a background on what made me think of this, I remained really uncertain about the American Legion Hall with guns and ammunition stored there. And while I understand they're stored correctly, the fact of the matter is that is a borough-owned property that will be rented and used by other community groups and people. And I think it's irresponsible for us to allow our property to have guns and ammunition, even if they're properly stored outside of the police department, specifically when they're next to a park and a library. And John, I'll defer to you.
I mean, if you're asking for the legal position, this is different than, allowing to carry a firearm or ammunition on borough property. I mean, we are preempted under the Uniform Firearm Acts from allowing that to happen. But this is regarding storage within borough's own property. So there's nothing that addresses this, whether it's a firearm or any other item that's out there. It's our property. And we can control what is kept and maintained in our building because it's not a public space. It's not there during public times. So there's not a legal issue just because it happens to be a firearm. So it's more about what council wants to do. Now, is there an issue with, insurance? I'm not sure if the insurance company does care if it's, they should be made aware of it to see if there's an issue with it. But if it's secured, it would be more decision as to what you want to do.
Pause a second and wait for the truck to move away. All right, do our current user agreements that we're setting up right now mention this at all?
They do, actually.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, the current user agreements do bar the use of storing weapons. In the case of the Legion agreement, which council will need to talk about later tonight, the Legion requested an amendment to the usual document to allow for the storage of the parade rifles that they have secured in the space that they currently use.
So there was a standard agreement that applied to everybody. and they were the only person that really wanted to address that particular issue.
Okay.
See, those,
So Cindy, if it's going into our user agreements right now, do you feel we need to do anything in addition to that, or just have this discussion about the Legion? I mean, it sounds like we've got it in our agreements now, and no other groups are storing stuff that don't have an agreement with us, right?
So I think it's probably easier just to do, if everyone, again, feels the same on council, that in fact it is not appropriate for any group to have, outside of the police obviously, to have weapons and ammunition in our buildings. I think we just make it uniformly beyond user agreements. And John, I don't know what that would look like legally, but no, I'm not in favor of granting that amendment. I think it probably is just easier to do kind of a blanket legislation to say that they're prohibited from all of our borough property.
What do you think about saying they can't have any ammunition? They can store unloaded weapons. I mean, if they're going to use them on parades, there's no reason to have them loaded.
Well, look, I am obviously for gun control. I think that this is one effort to say, I don't think there should be weapons of any type stored on our property where we do not control safety, access, and it's next to a library and a park.
so I just want to, Cindy, I kind of, I agree with you about the storage of weapons. I also agree with the Legion's request for an exception for their ceremonial parade weapons, out of respect for the role of the Legion in this community over decades and decades, who have a tradition of supporting the armed forces, who have a tradition of maintaining the war memorial, who have, I think just out of respect for people who have served in the armed forces and who are members of that organization, to tell them at this time that, like, we're not going to allow them to maintain their collection of parade weapons in the space that they've been using for many decades, like, it just doesn't make sense to me at this time. I think there may be naturally a time when that will work, but I just don't see, like, I think that would be a battle.
So
and I
guess
just personally would not like to offend that group.
I missed that last part.
I just would choose that we would not offend that group.
Bob, I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
You said you missed it, so I repeated
Can you
it.
hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up? I'll finish my thought.
I
Okay.
can hear you.
I think
Go
that
ahead.
we can ask the police to see if they will store the parade rifle and ammunition. And I think that we can certainly say that we obviously support all that the Legion does for the town, and yet storing weapons and ammunition next to a playground is just something that we don't want to be held responsible for, and we'd like to facilitate a conversation with Chief Gallagher to see where those weapons and ammunition can be stored in the police department.
So I still don't agree. Nobody said anything about ammunition. We're talking about ceremonial parade weapons. It's like they're decoration. They're not for fighting. They're not for use.
So my understanding was that there was ammunition, but it was stored separately.
Well, but then let's talk about the ammunition. I agree that the borough should have a moratorium on the storage of ammunition in our buildings. Like, I fully agree with that. I don't think we should be allowing ammunition for all of the reasons that you said. But I think it's being rather rigid to include ceremonial parade weapons when that's like the function of that organization within this community. I mean, we're a community that respects diversity and inclusion, and I think to take that stand is like really sort of like going after a particular culture and tradition without regard for inclusion. And I feel emotional about it because I've been thinking about this for a long time.
I feel like we're not going to reach consensus as a committee here. I think we all agree that the storage of ammunition is inappropriate. I think we're not going to come to a consensus about the storage of the actual weapons, so we should discuss in full council. So.
Sure, if we say absolutely no to ammunition, that there's never an appropriate event for anyone outside of the police to store the ammunition. That could be the beginning of the conversation.
No question about it.
I would also say I'd like the police to inspect the storage, the police chief to inspect the storage of the weapons and make sure they're properly stored. I mean, I'm sure they are treated with respect by the Legion, but they may not be what the police would consider secure. So.
Well, and also I'm sure there's a moratorium on like the storage of hand grenades or bombs or explosive devices, and I think that we haven't said anything about those things, but I think those are already covered by Pennsylvania law, probably, right, John?
Mm-hmm.
You probably can't have
a ceremonial bomb.
an active. An active, hand grenade.
Yes,
right?
yeah, I'm sure.
That's probably already covered by the law, but I think,
it's not considered a firearm.
So I think it's fine, if you want to have a ceremonial weapon without the ammunition, I guess I think we have a lot of common ground there, Cindy, around the need for ammunition. Yeah.
Okay, I just, Cindy, do you have anything more you want to add? Are you good? I just want to, it's 7:15, so I want to.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're going to talk about probably when we look over those user agreements at full council.
I agree. I think it's going to come up then, so we can have a fuller discussion at that point. Last item, the action item is the RACP grant.
Yeah. So this item here, it was brought to my attention by State Senator Capoletti's office that the state legislature was accepting, items for the state capital budget. And the state capital budget authorization is the first step in the Racp Grant program, which stands for Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program. And in short, it's basically a program the state has to encourage economic and community development through the construction or renovation of buildings. I've experienced with it in my last job where funds from that were used to turn a old PennDOT yard into a borough hall, police station, and a public park. And just thinking about a lot of the conversation the borough has had with 201 Sabine, while we don't know the specific purpose or anything that we're doing with 201 Sabine yet, whatever direction we go with that property, this grant funding would be able to assist us with it. And we're at a stage with this grant application where we don't have to be specific with what we would do with the money yet. We would just need to give a general overview to the state legislature. If we got approved to get on the list by the state legislature, then we'd have to do a more formal grant application, which would need to be more specific about the use of funding. So that was the general purpose. I thought it made a lot of sense for what's going on in the borough and the purpose of this grant. The only caveat is because we don't know what we're doing with 201 Sabine yet, it was tough for me to figure out what our ask should be from the state. So just to kind of cover all of our potential bases for the property, I threw out a number of $3 million that we request. And, other municipalities have used this funding for situations similar to 201 Sabine, and so I thought it might be helpful for us.
So this would basically be putting us on the state's radar. It would not be committing us to any particular course of action with 201 Sabine.
That is correct, yes. We would not be committed to anything. We would not be committed to any match or any action or anything like that. It would just give us the opportunity for the next 10 years, if we got on the list, to then be able to apply for funding and then be committed to action. But this step does not require any match or commitment from the municipality.
It's terrific.
Yeah, that's great.
And I just want to make it clear that, Borough Council has not been discussing plans for 201 Sabine in private. This is the first we're discussing this particular grant, and it does not commit us to any particular course of action. So we were still, we'll be discussing any future plans for 201 Sabine in public meetings like this one. So.
Well, we were to be on the list, we'd have 10 years to figure it out.
That's right. Hopefully quicker than that. All right. Okay, I think we'll, seems like we all agree that that's a good move. That's it for action items. Do we have any public comment on?
I see that there's an action item, the Ordinance 1037 for borough manager duties.
Oops, am I looking at an old agenda?
I see that that's coming up tonight. I see that we have the Girl Scouts consideration of Girl Scout. Now maybe you're not bringing those up because they're on the consent agenda already.
I'm just looking at the F&A agenda. I'm not looking at the.
So there, it's not
But if you want to discuss.
those were on the consent agenda, but we discussed other stuff that was on the consent agenda as well. So I thought I have no questions about those.
Okay.
And Fred, I had an issue for an executive session, but given the time, perhaps we can hold this to a full council
Okay.
conversation to give folks time to get up and stretch and use the restroom.
Yeah.
On which one?
Well, since executive session.
I had an executive session planned for F&A. Samantha, if you think we can just hold that off to a full council
Yeah, that sounds good.
executive session to give you all time to stretch and use the restroom and not have to kick everyone out. Looks like folks are settling in.
Is there any public comment? Anybody wish to speak up on the F&A matters? Okay, anybody in the Zoom room, Samantha? Besides
No.
Cindy? Okay. All right. Then I think we're adjourned.
Thanks, Fred.
So 10 minutes.
Thank you, Fred.